Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Dear students, this is lecture number 11. Today we are going to talk about problems in phonemic analysis. If you remember, the last part of lecture 10 was an introduction to the problems in phonemic analysis. Today we are going to deal with the first and the most important problem we have in phonemic analysis in English. Affricates, actually, as you know, is usually called complex sounds. If you remember, they are composed of two consonants, a stop plus fricative, and the result is an affricate. That's why we call them complex consonants, because they start like a stop and end like a fricative. We have only two affricates in English, ch and j. Ch and j. Ch is seen as a stop sound, t, followed by the fricative sound, sh, as in the word ch. Ch, ch, ch. J is seen as a stop sound, which is de, followed by the fricative j, and the result is jam, 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 ch and jam. Now the question is the affricate one phoneme or two phonemes? Do we deal with ch and j as two phonemes or one phoneme altogether? Actually, there are two approaches to deal with the analysis of affricates. The first one is called two-phoneme analysis. And I want you to pay attention. The topic is not easy. It is a little bit complicated and difficult. So you need to pay attention and follow step by step. Two-phoneme analysis. Based on this analysis, the affricate is to be considered as two phonemes, t and sh alone, and d and j alone. So we don't deal with ch as one phoneme, but two phonemes, t and sh, and j is d and j. Actually, those who believe in this analysis, the two phoneme analysis, they are motivated by the idea of economy. What do you mean by this? Al-iqtisad. This means that there is no need to have two extra symbols in the list of English phonemes. So if we say that the affricates are made up of two separate phonemes, there is no need to have this symbol or to have this symbol and we add them to the list, because ta is already found, sh is already found, de is the same, and j is the same. So we need the ta and sh, and we write them one after the other. De, j, the same thing. It's not a whole phoneme. If we deal with it as one phoneme, it's going to be another phoneme that should be added to the list. Based on this analysis, if we have a look at the word church, it would be analyzed into t, 1, sh, 2, 3, t, 4, sh, 5. They are going to be 5 phonemes, 5 sounds, because t is alone, sh is alone. 2, not 1, not 1 unit, 2. Now, the other way to look at affricates is to deal with them as one phoneme. So j is one phoneme by itself, and ch is one phoneme by itself, and each one of them is a distinct phoneme that should be included in the list of phonemes in English. Here, if we adopt this analysis, we are going to have only 3 sounds. Up there, we had 5 sounds. Now we have only 3 because ch is one phoneme, is another phoneme, and ch is the third one. This is the difference between the two approaches, the two analyses. Now, this analysis is motivated by several assumptions. The first one, as I said, is motivated by economy. That is, to have a shorter list of the phonemes of English. No need for these. We don't need them. But here we are going to have 2 phonemes for ch and j. So it's not good, this analysis is not good in terms of economy, because we will have 2 extra sounds. But scholars who believe in this analysis also have their own reasons. One of the reasons is that, phonetically speaking, and when we say phonetically speaking, we are going to talk about the actual and phonetic and acoustic features of the sound, just like length, density, pulse, formants, etc. So it is assumed that there are acoustic differences between sh and j when they are alone and when they become parts of an affricate. They are not exactly the same. More specifically, the sh sound and the j sound, when they are pronounced alone, they tend to be longer. They take more time, more duration from the sh and j, which are part in affricates. So the sh we find alone is longer than the sh we find in ch, and the j alone is longer than the one we find in j. So there are differences. We cannot say we have t and we have sh after it. No, it's one phoneme, because the acoustic features of sh are different from the sh when it is alone, as in shirt, for example. We have only sh here. This sh is longer than the one we find in church, etc. But we have a problem with this assumption. The problem is that there is not enough research about this point. So still we need more studies to be conducted to identify these acoustic differences and to prove that they are really existent. Another point is distribution. When we say distribution, we need to talk about when do we find the sound. Do we find it initially, medially, finally, etc.? If we look at ch and j, we can find them initially, we can then find them medially and finally as well. And this is a good proof in favor of the 2-phoneme analysis. It's just like any sound. So why don't we consider them as separate phonemes, since we can find them initially, medially, and finally? But again, there is a problem with this assumption, because there are phonemes in English that are not found in all positions, yet they are phonemes. For example, the sound ha. The phoneme ha is found initially, medially, but not finally. Ra sound is found initially, medially, but not finally. Of course, in RP English, not in American English. The sound ing, we cannot find it initially. We only have it medially and finally. So do we consider them not phonemes? No, they are phonemes. So this is not a convincing assumption. The other assumption is consonant clusters. It is assumed that affricates اللي هم ch and j can combine with other consonants to make clusters of consonants, such as watched. Look, we have a cluster of ch plus d. Sorry, it is not ch, it is t. Watched. It is washed. And wedged. This is d. So here we have ch plus t, and here we have j plus d. So we can have these affricates in clusters. But we have also another problem. In Affricates, actually, Che and Je cannot be part of initial clusters. We cannot have them in initial clusters. So they cannot combine freely with all consonants and in all positions, initial, medial, and final. No, there are limitations. There are limitations. The fourth assumption is to depend on native speakers' intuition, what we call in Arabic al-badiha. So what the native speaker says is supposed to be accepted and correct. If the native speaker says that Che and Je are one phoneme, let's consider them one phoneme. If he says they are made up of two phonemes, let's go with that and say they are different or two distinct phonemes. So intuition, most native speakers who do not have phonetic knowledge, they are not trained, we call them naive speakers, feel that an affricate is one phoneme, not two, when they are asked about their opinion. When you ask a native speaker about his or her opinion about affricates, most of them will say, okay, they are one phoneme. So if we are guided by their intuition, we can say that Che and Je are two distinct phonemes. Each one of them is a phoneme by itself, not a combination of two phonemes. But here also we have a problem. It is not accurate because sometimes native speakers' intuition might be affected by spelling. They might be deceived by spelling or the nature of the task given to them. Okay? So we cannot wholly and fully depend on native speakers' intuition. But to conclude, we can say that the four assumptions altogether are more convincing from the way each one of them is taken separately. So if we consider them the four, we may have more solid basement for assuming that Che and Je are distinct phonemes. So we prefer the one phoneme analysis. Why? Because we have four assumptions. If they are taken all together, they are more convincing than the first analysis, which is the two phoneme analysis, which is only motivated by economy. It's only for the sake of economy that we do not consider these phonemes as distinct phonemes. I know that this topic is not easy, so read the lecture, listen to the video, and feel free to ask any question you want. Thank you for